Hello, welcome to this silly little video that I put up together where I'm gonna be yapping and complaining and being judgmental towards Resident Evil 4 weapons. I feel like this game had a pretty good lineup and variety of weapons, especially for its time. I feel like most weapons felt like they were good considering the game didn't take too much to beat. However, this game also had its fair share of goofy goober ass guns. They were not great. You could give them wet willies, swirlies, punch them. They were punching bags really. You could see that they were trying their best at everything, but their best was not good enough. Soon enough, you'll see what guns I'm talking about, and for that, you should stay away from them at all costs. I will be making an exception of weapons, those being the wonder weapons of this game, such as the Chicago typewriter, the infinite rocket launcher, the PRL, and the hand cannon, because these guns were just added into the game to fully harass the villagers, the cult members, and the soldiers. I will, however, be talking about the Matilda considering its limitations stop it from fully bullying the NPCs of this game. These limitations make the gun act as a normal weapon, considering you still have to beat the game once in order to unlock it. Anywho, with all that out of the way, let's begin. First up, I'm gonna be showcasing the Red 9 and the Blacktail. So, the Red 9 you can actually buy at the end of Chapter 2.1 or the beginning of Chapter 2.2. It's gonna set you back 14,000 pesetas, and you can actually buy a stock for 4,000 pesetas. It's gonna take you a total of 331,000 pesetas to fully max it out, and a total of 335,000 pesetas if you want to max it out and buy the stock. This exclusive upgrade is gonna set its firepower to 6.5 damage. The Red 9 is actually the strongest handgun in the game. However, the rest of the stats are outdone by other pistols. In conclusion, the Red 9 is a very powerful weapon. You cannot go wrong with this gun. It's easily gonna take out any kind of enemy, from regular enemies to mini bosses to even bosses. I would argue that the Red 9 is actually the second best option for handguns in the game. It will get you through the game very easily. It does a lot of damage and is very reliable, especially if you have the stock, but at the same time I'm not gonna sit here and tell you that the stock is necessary. You can get away with not buying the stock and still perform greatly. At the end of the day, the accuracy is also dependent on the player. Next up is going to be the Blacktail. You first unlock the Blacktail in Chapter 3.1. It's going to cost you 24,000 pesetas and set you back a total of 362,000 pesetas to fully max it out. With that being said, that's actually the most expensive pistol to upgrade in the game. It also is the second most powerful handgun, but it has the steadiest handling and the highest ammo capacity magazines in its class. And although it comes in second for the damage, it actually ends up doing more damage per second thanks to its rapid fire rate. However, players may encounter issues and run out of ammo rapidly if they become too trigger happy. With that being said, I personally believe the Blacktail is the best option for handguns as it is the most balanced, well-performing pistol there is. While the Red 9 does tons of damage per shot, the Blacktail outperforms it with its other stats and it's still able to take out any type of enemy in the game. I also like to think that the Blacktail being Ada's primary weapon for separate ways and it being in Leon's inventory for the mercenaries would prove my belief, but the truth is that if any villager saw you walking around with this thing, they'd probably just piss their pants like silly little piss babies. And like I said, you cannot go wrong with either of these two weapons. They're both going to perform pretty well throughout the entirety of the game, and they both have advantages over one another. The Red 9 has higher output of damage, so it's going to perform better against individual enemies. And the Blacktail has a higher rate of fire, so it's going to perform better against a larger amount of enemies. But at the end of the day, they're both going to perform great up until the end. They can take out just about anything, and you can actually use them against bosses and mini bosses. I'll now be talking about the starting handgun and the Punisher. However, this is where the yapping gets crazy. I'll begin with the starting handgun. The handgun is originally free but could also be purchased for 8,000 pesetas if sold. And because it's the starting pistol, that means you can purchase it from the very first time you see the merchant in Chapter 1-2. Not only is this weapon free from the start, but it will also be the cheapest pistol to max out, setting you back only 198,000 pesetas. That's of course if you keep it from the start, or 206,000 pesetas if you buy it again down the line. Its exclusive ability when fully upgraded is that you'll supposedly have 5 times better chances at getting critical shots. However, with this being the most inaccurate and least stable gun in the game, this ability doesn't come in as handy as one would think, especially with its very low firepower of only a flat 2. Looking at the technical side of things, handguns in this game have a 5 to 10% chance to hit a critical headshot. With this ability, that 5 to 10% chance turns into a much better 25 to 50% chance for this specific weapon. For this to be implemented, the damage in its critical shot multiplier has to be taken into consideration. Again, this handgun only does 2.0 damage, and the pistol crits are equal to 10 times body shot damage, even though they require headshots to be implemented. It should also be noted that headshots amplify the bullet damage by 1.2 times. So when you're hitting headshots that aren't crits, you'll only be dealing 2.4 damage to an enemy. Aside from that, the health of the enemies have to be taken into consideration as well. Villagers have 8 health points, cultists have 14 health points, and soldiers have 17 health points. This would mean that hypothetically, one critical shot dealing 20 damage is able to take out a soldier with its 17 health points. However, like I said, this is only hypothetical, considering that's if the critical shot actually landed. The main issue with this weapon is that the 50% chance is not even guaranteed. Instead, the player is stuck with every shot varying from the 25 to 50% range. This would mean that perhaps 1 in 25 crits can give a full 50% chance of being a critical and actually landing. In conclusion, instead of heavily relying on luck for the gun to show its full potential, I would much rather pick a different pistol with higher firepower such as a Blacktail or the Red 9 and finish off the enemy in a maximum of 3 to 4 shots guaranteed while still having a slim chance at landing crits. For me, the best purpose for this handgun is to break the medallions, get the free Punisher, sell them, and then get either the Blacktail or the Red 9. This gun goes to sleep every night crying because it knows how much it sucks. It knows that whenever the villagers see you walking around with this thing, they'll just give you a wedgie. It's very unreliable due to the lack of firepower. I don't think it's too efficient at taking out mini bosses, let alone bosses. I think you're better off just punching them or hitting them with a stick. The Punisher is the last and most doo-doo ass gun in the list for handguns. The Punisher first becomes available in Chapter 1-3 for 20,000 pesetas. However, the merchant will actually give you this garbage for free if you shoot 10 medallions. And if you shoot all 15, he'll even throw in a free firepower upgrade on it. It will set you back a total of 296,000 pesetas to fully upgrade it if you purchase it, but if you collect it with the 10 medallions, it's gonna cost you 276,000 pesetas instead. However, it'll only cost you 266,000 pesetas if you get all 15 medallions. The Punisher's quirk is that it penetrates 2 enemies originally, but its exclusive upgrade will make it so that it penetrates through 5 enemies instead, which may sound pretty good on paper, but unfortunately it's not a really great feature for this gun in particular, considering it has the lowest firepower in its class being set at only 1.9, and that actually makes it the second weakest gun in the game, with the TMP being the weakest. The only positive thing about this weapon is its accuracy and its penetration ability. It can come in handy when fighting the little fellas with the shields, considering the bullet is going to penetrate through it and hit the enemy holding it instead. However, it still has a harder time breaking the shield itself even if you're hitting the enemy. It's best to just go for the legs and kick them or suplex them, whatever it is that Leon does to the shield people. Other than that, there are no redeeming qualities for this weapon. Again, it's the weakest in its class, and sometimes trying to line up enemies to get the best value out of it may even end up getting you hit or something. I feel like this gun shares a similar problem as the handgun. Both of these guns, instead of getting an additional stat boost, they got their own abilities. The handgun with the critical enhancer and the Punisher with the better penetration. The problem with these abilities is that they can only be used against the small enemies. They won't apply or be that great against mini bosses, let alone actual bosses. The easiest solution to make these abominations good would have been to give them greater firepower, perhaps somewhere between a 4.0 and a 3.5. I understand that they have the lower firepower since they have their exclusive abilities unlike the Red 9 or the Blacktail, but those low stats end up making the gap between good and bad pretty noticeable in the end. However, Resident Evil 4 is still beatable with a ton of different strategies. I can complain all day about these two loser ass guns, but they'll still get the job done. Maybe poorly, but they'll get it done. Since you're already watching this silly little clip against Salazar, I may as well talk about the minethrower. Unfortunately, this is a weapon that had a pretty decent potential but was turbo-cucked by its own exclusive upgrade, which I'll get into shortly. The minethrower becomes available in Chapter 3.1 and can be purchased for 9,800 pesetas. It's relatively cheap for what it does, and you can also purchase a custom scope for 8,000 pesetas extra. It will take you 192,800 pesetas to fully upgrade it without the scope, and 200,800 with the scope. The exclusive upgrade for this weapon ironically makes the minethrower worse as it takes the freedom of aiming away from the player by adding homing abilities to the mine darts. The homing is not too great and may sometimes end up hitting the wrong target, or in some cases it may entirely miss the weak points from bosses and mini-bosses. On the other hand, it improves the blast radius, but I don't think it's worth all the trouble the homing can cause. During this fight with Salazar, I noticed that it was better to aim over him or next to him, as otherwise I wouldn't have been able to hit him at all. I suppose the homing can be useful for the borderline invisible Novistadors, but I don't think it's worth spending 200,000 pesetas to fight only a few of them throughout the game. I suggest not buying the exclusive upgrade and instead spending those pesetas on some good cushion alcohol. In all honesty, I don't think the minethrower is even worth buying. It is going to take out a few enemies, but if left without any upgrades, it'll just stun them in the end. At that point, I think just sticking to a shotgun is much better. And speaking of shotguns, make sure to tune in either tomorrow or the day after. I'll be talking about the rest of the weapons. I'll be talking about a 5th shotgun that not a whole lot of people know about actually. So that's gonna be the shotguns, the rifles, the magnums, the TMP, ATIS explosive bow, and the Matilda, of course. I wasn't expecting for this to be a 2-part video, but I'm seeing that it's getting a little long, and since I'm barely starting, I think it'd be smarter for me to split this idea into 2 videos, because I'm sure that if I make just a long ass video, perhaps it may not get a whole lot of views. But anywho, if you made it here, if you made it to this point in the video, I really appreciate it. I really hope you have a good rest of the day. If you'd like, please leave any suggestions, any comments, any feedback really. Everything and anything is highly appreciated. So thank you so much. Bye bye.